Ben is a Shakespearean actor, a producer, and a writer. And when you read the blurb here in Shakespeare on Toast that he penned some time ago, it says that he studied English language and linguistics. So he's, a good guy, a fellow linguist here at Lancaster University. He has then worked for TV, for the Globe, the famous Shakespearean Globe. He's also been narrator for Channel 4 and for the BBC. And perhaps last but not least, he's written several publications on Shakespearean drama, and last but definitely not least, on the way that Shakespeare was pronounced originally. Together with his famous father, Professor David Crystal, they've reconstructed the original pronunciation of Renaissance English. And I hope that I can say this, Ben, we may just be lucky enough tonight to hear a little bit of this. We'll see. Okay, so without any further ado, the floor is yours, Ben, and we are all ears and eyes.
Thank you so much, Grzegorz, and thank you to Macmillan for running this day, and thank you all for staying on for this last session. And actually, well done for getting here. Congratulations to you all, not just for today, but for getting here to this part of what has been a very, very difficult and challenging year, I'm sure, for you all. And I've been very lucky. I get to visit schools all around the world. And I get to, I'm very lucky because I get to parachute in and parachute out again. But I can only imagine the challenges you've all been facing. And yeah, my power to you all. Zoom is an interesting and unusual thing. Thank goodness for it. But it can be anxiety inducing. And I don't know about you, but being on it all day, or at least for a good chunk of the day, it can feel very fatiguing. And that's partly because all of the socio-linguistic cues that we are used to in day-to-day real-life interaction, so many of them are missing. And as we sit at our desks and sit at the screen, we neglect the body. Now, as Dave said just now, there are wonderful positives and good, nourishing ways forward to be found in this new normal. We have a lot to thank for this digital world. Can you imagine what this year would have been like if we had had to live it 10 years ago when Grzegorz and I first met? It would have been much, much harder. Now, I am the curator of a Shakespeare company called the Shakespeare Ensemble. And we were due to meet in March with members from all over the world. Were coming to Wales to take part in an R&D workshop. And then we were going to go to do 2 shows in New York. Of course, none of this happened. But over the course of the year, we've developed ways to collaborate together. And these we have a meeting every Friday now, and I'd like to share with you some of the tools that we've developed, as we found them to be useful, incredibly useful to our teaching colleagues as they build them into their class plans and as they try to navigate a way through the virtual teaching environments. Now, because of those technical problems, I am running out of time. And whenever we feel that in the Shakespeare Ensemble, the phrase is, we are running out of time, so we must go slow. We are running out of time, so we must go slow. So I will invite you all now to, if you're sitting at your desk, if you're dressed, I suppose some people choose not to dress fully when they come to the Zoom office. But if you're dressed and if you have shoes on, I invite you to slip your shoes off. You can take your socks off too, if you want. You don't have to, but I invite you to. And I also invite you to be like me, to stand up. I'm standing here. And if you can't stand up, or if you simply don't want to, that's fine. But if you find you're leaning towards the screen, then pull back and let your spine be long. And I invite you to feel the contact that you have with the ground under your feet. You can close your eyes if you want in a moment, but I'm going to invite you to take a nice big breath, not from the lungs up here, but from the diaphragm, the space around your navel right here. Nice big breath, either from here or from the side as well. A nice big breath, and you can freely use your diaphragm if you're standing. That's one of the problems when we sit, that our diaphragms are constrained and crunched, and as we stand, there's much more freedom. And I'm gonna, with a timer here, I'm gonna give us 1 minute, and in this 1 minute I invite you to reflect. I invite you to reflect why you're here. I invite you to reflect on what you don't want to bring into this session. And I invite you to reflect and let go of all the other things that might be buzzing around your head. We're going to take 1 minute now. You can stretch if you like in this minute as we stop neglecting the body. Why are you here? And what do you want from this session? Okay, that's 1 minute. Thank you, everyone. Now, I invite you to verbally check in with me in the chat, if you can access the chat. And before every meeting, before every rehearsal, we will land, we will ground ourselves, we will sit in the space or stand in the space that we're in, and we will check in, a bit like arriving at the hotel. When you get the key card and you go up to your room, you've arrived. This is really good mental health practice that we've found is incredibly useful no matter the age of the participants. In the chat here, 1 word, something that might get in the way of you being here, some anxiety, some football match, some concerns, some hanging thought type, or something positive, something that you'd like to bring with you into this session, some tone, a feeling, a mood. Put it in the chat here, something you want to carry with you or something you don't. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. Beautiful, lovely, lovely words coming in. Thank you so much. Now, webcams are beautiful things. Thank goodness for them. They are amazing at transferring sound and light. They are terrible at transferring atmosphere and empathy. And theatre, all we want in the theatre is a shared space. It's just like a classroom. We want to be able to breathe the same air and be able to intuit what our students and our fellows and our audiences want from us without word, with a feeling, from body language. Like in this webinar, when we have our meetings, the mics are off, unless you're invited or unless you use the raise hand. The cameras are off too, just like this webinar. And someone mentioned in the morning session that, this was a participant from Poland, that some parents, they don't feel comfortable with their young children having their cameras on. That's fine as far as we're concerned. Participation, the focus is key. Some teachers complain, I've heard, about students zooming on their beds. although some students don't have anywhere else to zoom from. Where they are and how they are is one thing. Demanding them to be in a particular way that other people may not be comfortable with is another. Right here, right now, you don't have a choice, but if you did have a choice, I would say your mic's off unless you're invited or you raise your hand, and your camera's on or off as you prefer. Right now, I have my notes in front of me on this webinar screen because I don't like to see myself. I always hide my self view because otherwise I spend the whole time checking my hair. I don't want to focus on me. I want to focus on you. You. We're going to speak some Shakespeare together. Now, I know that speaking Shakespeare can seem like a very scary idea, but take courage, because in webinars, no one can hear you scream Shakespeare as loud and as hard as you dare to, and you're welcome to here with me today. Now, I'm going to post in the chat here the first 4 lines of Sonnet 18. You can look it up, have a quick Google. You can find it in your own language if you choose. And we're just going to focus on the first 4 lines of this most famous sonnet by Shakespeare. It begins, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" That's the opening question. And then the rest of the poem is the answer. "Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date." And then the poet continues. "Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee." So that's the whole of the sonnet. If you take those first 4 lines from "Shall I compare thee" down to "too short a date," try writing it down or typing it out once you've grabbed it from the internet. Writing things down is a 400-year-old rehearsal practice. This is how Shakespeare's actors learned their lines. Writing something down is an integral part of the memorization process, but it's also an integral part of ownership. And if there's one thing that's missing about any great work, it's the fact that it's great, and what's missing is our ownership over greatness, because great things seem out of reach. Write it in your own hand, in your own handwriting, and immediately it becomes yours. And that's the beautiful thing about Shakespeare's sonnets. They're all written in the first person. We don't have to worry about plot or character. This is about you. Now, we need to know what it means. I said that the poem begins with a question, and the question is, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Now, we need to know who we're asking, and we can tell because the poet doesn't say, "Shall I compare you to a summer's day?" He says, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" And in Shakespeare's time, they had 2 versions of you, the second person pronoun, just like modern French, tu and vous, or modern Spanish, te and usted, or modern German, du and sie. One is formal and one is informal. And in Shakespeare's time, you was formal and thee and thou was informal. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? The poet is talking to someone that they know, probably a lover or someone they love, because they're asking if they should compare them to something supposedly beautiful, like a summer's day. The problem is, Shakespeare wrote in England. If any of you have been to England during the summertime, you know that summer is not actually a very nice thing to be compared to. It's too hot. it gets cloudy. It doesn't last very long. When you have a picnic, there are wasps and ants, and actually, you are far more beautiful than a summer's day. And in fact, your beauty is going to live forever, because I'm going to write your beauty into this poem. And in 400 years' time, a ginger actor is going to be speaking to teachers all around the world, and they're going to be talking about you. So your beauty will live forever because this poem will live forever. That's what this poem is about. Now, as Carol said earlier, we all have different accents, and this should be celebrated. We're going to explore these 4 lines, or maybe just this first line, in your own accent. Now, your accent is your identity. It's your vocal fingerprint. Your accent says more about who you are and the life you've lived and the emotions you've felt and the story that is you, more than the clothes that you wear or the things that you like or the other things that you retweet. So let's explore saying just the first line in your own speaking voice. I'm going to do it now, and I'm putting my hands here because I want to feel where my resonance is, where it vibrates when I use my natural speaking voice. I'd invite you to do the same. If you've sat down, I'd invite you to stand up again. If you're still standing, good for you. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I can feel that the resonance is just here, just above my collarbone. This is where my natural speaking resonance is. You try it. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? If English isn't your first language, try something in your natural language, because the resonance will shift. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And place your hand where you feel the resonance. For me, it's here. Now, if this means anything to you, say the first line of this sonnet in your Shakespeare voice, in your best Shakespeare voice, in the sound that you think Shakespeare should be spoken in. For me, it's received pronunciation, and I speak Shakespeare up here. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Yes, it's a resonance sort of up here, and my voice is higher. Do you notice? Because my natural speaking voice is a little lower. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Oh, actually, it's not up here. It's sort of here. It's sort of stuck just here. I don't know why. Now, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Notice that in Shakespeare voice, my voice raises in pitch and in register. This is what the line sounds like in original pronunciation, in the reconstructed accent that Shakespeare and his actors would have spoken in 400 years ago. I'll give the first 4 lines so you can get used to the sound. It would have sounded like this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough wines, not rough winds, rough wines do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lace hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, but chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines the time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. I got carried away and I did the whole sonnet in original pronunciation. Back to the first line. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I want everyone to try it with me. Remember, no one else can hear you, and if they can, they don't care. The first word, shall, is exactly the same as modern English. The only difference is the L has a quality more like the L of milk, a darker L. So shall becomes shull, shull, shull. I Well, if I say the first person pronoun my resonance is sort of up here, but with original pronunciation, the sound is I, I, I. And this is why we opened up the diaphragm earlier. Here, I, I, I. This is where the center of Shakespeare's performers was much, much lower. Their center of gravity is much lower than the Shakespeare that you might be familiar with when it's all up here. Shall I compare becomes compare. Shall I compare? Now, you have a choice. You can either have shall I compare thee, or you can say shall I compare thee. You can elide it, you make it faster. Shakespeare's actors spoke much faster than we do today. With Shakespeare anyway, with poetry. There's a great myth that poetry is easier to understand when you slow down. It's not. It's much easier to understand if you speed up. Shall I compare thee? To is just to. A is just a or a. 50% of the sounds in modern English are the same as they were 400 years ago. Great. It's so easy. Summer is exactly the same, only there's a stronger R sound. That R becomes a rhotic R sound. And that sound traveled across the seas and went to America and a few other parts of the world. But that's why a lot of American sounds have a lot of that strong R sound. So, shall I compare thee to a summers, and then day is the same, but it's just you drop your jaw and open up a bit more like Yorkshire, day. Or if you know the Thunderbirds marionettes where their jaws just drop, day. Try it with me now, word by word. Shall I compare thee, or compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And it's a question, so ask the question. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Well done. For those of you that tried it, fantastic work. This is about choice, and it's about voice. It's about ownership. It's about coloring the words and making them your own. Your students all have different experiences of summer. Summer for me, it's Wales and it's windy and it's raining, but there's blue sky, and I feel all of that imagery and I put it into the word summer. And rough winds. Well, what are the winds that are rough around you all? What do your students feel about things that are lovely? And what do they think of darling buds? And how do they say it when they attach their life experiences to these words? That's what we call coloring in the words and making poems image rich. Invite your students, invite yourself to talk and think about how you feel about the words that you're saying. And the best way to do that, never mind Shakespeare voice, and whilst it's fun to speak in original pronunciation, never mind that too. The right accent for Shakespeare is your accent because you want to speak it out loud. And I encourage you with all of my heart, take this line. If you dare to, take the whole poem and give it to someone. Say it as a testament of love to your loved one tonight. Say it to someone you meet on the street. Ask someone, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? But be careful, because they just might say yes. At the end of every session, at the end of every rehearsal, at the end of every meeting, we've checked in, so we'll check out. And checking out, or sometimes we call it reinforcing, is a really good way to end a session. And again, it gives a great opportunity to speak to mental health issues, which are so important right now, especially this year. So I invite you all, each of you, you don't have to, but I invite you all to reinforce this session, this webinar, this year with one word in the chat. Something that you want to take with you, a tool, a thought, a feeling. or perhaps something that you don't want to take with you, something that's not useful to you anymore. Anxiety, bad memory, discomfort, unhappiness, whatever it is. Thank you for spending some time with me today. And I hugely reinforce you all for all the terrific work and necessary work that you're all doing. Thank you.
Got concerned.
Hey, Gregor.
Oh, lovely.
At least we think we have Gregor's back.
Huh?
Yeah, there he is. And with the glasses. Fantastic.
Yeah. I was just saying, Ben, that one person wrote in the comments that she did try along with you and her husband got really concerned.
That can be healed with a loving kiss, I'm sure.
But on a more serious note, it struck me the second time I listened to you today that what you have to offer is such a perfect illustration of the idiocy of this term that has probably been the most frequent term used in times of lockdown, which is social isolation. Right? I mean, it's not about social isolation. We may need physical isolation, but we desperately need social closeness. And what you've been saying is just such an amazing illustration of the validity of it. Thank you very much. I mean, it really, really is very powerful indeed.
Absolutely, totally. It's been fantastic. And
thank you, Louise.
Can I ask you? Well, there's a question. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Somebody has asked. So, how would you say this poem, for example, this sonnet, with an American accent? They were curious. Now, you briefly, I heard you briefly say something, but I think it would be lovely to hear. We're so used to the British accents and the English accent, so I'm going to challenge you.
I was, as I said, I'm very lucky. I get to travel the world and work with schools and institutions and theatre companies all over. And I was working in a school in Reno, and there was a guy there who was playing Oberon in Midsummer Night's Dream. And he said, flower of this purple dye, hit with Cupid's archery, sinking apple of his eye. It doesn't rhyme. And I said, well, no, but it does in the original pronunciation.
Yes.
Flower of this purple dye, hit with Cupid's archery, sinking apple of his eye. And he said, well, that's great. That's great, Ben, but we're not doing the show in original pronunciation. And I said, well, that's no problem. Pick an accent that it does work in. So, for example, the same speech in Southern American, flower this purple dye, hit with Cupid's archery, sinking apple of his eye.
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic.
Whatever works.
Whatever works.
It works. It totally works. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. So bravo from all of us.
Yes.
I wish we could put everyone now, on video so that you could hear a storm of applause as appropriate. But it'll just have to be us. So Ben, once again,
I hear it and feel it in the chat. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant!
I'm sorry.
Such a pleasure.
To talk more.
Such a pleasure and honor, really. Okay, so have the merriest of Christmases and a happier New Year.
Time to you all.
And stay well, stay safe, and stay positive.